This is the Better Ottawa Municipal Panel. Today is Friday, November the 14th. My name is Neil Saravanamutu. I'm joined by Joanne Cunello and John Willing. Hello to you both.
Hello, hello.
Hi.
So we've
Weren't we
cleared
just here?
remembrance. What's that, Joanne?
Weren't we just here Monday?
It sure feels like it. So we've cleared Remembrance Day. We're now into budget season. What does that mean for you? Like, where are we in the year?
Well, for me, because, and I was saying this to John, we covered City Hall for so long. To me, it was like you have Remembrance Day, then the budget comes, and in my head, after budget, it's Christmas, right? So like you have the budget, you sit down, you have your head down, you're going to a committee like every day it seems, or every other day to go through each committee's, each department's specific budget. Because the first day, and we'll talk about that, it's the high level stuff. Then you're like trying to figure out what's actually happening in the budget. But at the end of that rainbow, there is Christmas, and so that got you through. But in other years too, I can't imagine councillors, they just came off the L word, so like Lansdowne is a big deal. Thankfully that didn't happen every year. And this year also, they're ending the season with the comprehensive zoning bylaw that is coming to committee on December 17th. I don't remember anything ever happening a week before Christmas, let alone a 3-year giant zoning bylaw. So Christmas is still a little farther off at City Hall for me this year, but it's there. It's there.
Actually, John. Sorry, go ahead, John.
No, I was just going to say, it's just kind of echo exactly what Joanne said. This time of year, when you're down at City Hall, it's all about the budget, and I can imagine there's some exhaustion coming off Lansdowne too, some political exhaustion around the horseshoe, and so it'll be interesting to watch that dynamic during budget time to see council move from a pretty acrimonious file on Lansdowne and go to what can be an acrimonious file, the city budget. I don't know how acrimonious it's going to be this time. We're going to talk about this, but the fall and in early winter is always an interesting place at City Hall, and the building itself can be an interesting place too because staff are decorating for Christmas. It's that they do a great job down there. So there's definitely a change happening at City Hall between files and also between seasons.
Yeah. Well, speaking of getting, decorating, I have to ask you guys if you've thought about putting up your Christmas lights yet, because I have to be honest that I actually didn't take mine down last year.
Excellent.
All set.
Excellent. The squirrel didn't eat the bulbs or anything?
Apparently not.
Okay,
no,
awesome.
No, we have not. We were talking about it. My family was talking about it this morning about when we start decorating for Christmas. But I think we're going to try to hold off for a couple more weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. The lights are good.
Well, we are here to talk about the budget.
Okay.
And Joanne, as you mentioned, today we're going to talk about the highlights of the budget. And then in the future weeks, we can get into some of the specific committees. But maybe, Joanne, you could start us off. What are some of the headlines that came out this week?
Sure. So I'm always aging myself on this podcast. I remember the day when the budget just topped $2 billion. And we're like, oh my God, the budget's now $2 billion. In 2026, the operating budget will be $5.2 billion in Ottawa, plus another almost $2 billion in capital spending. So a huge amount of money. It's kind of hard to get your head around what that even means, I find. And just a little budget 101. About a little under half of the money that the city gets for their operating comes from taxes, including the payments in lieu of taxes that we get from federal government and other governments for things like hospitals and government buildings. And it's a little bit higher than it's been in last years. About a quarter of the money comes from provincial and federal grants and transfers, and then about 28% from fees and other sources. And then, of course, on the capital side, that $2 billion comes from debt, development charges, reserves, and other bits of revenue. So that's how the budget basically works. Now, how are your bills going up? Here is what everyone's getting. The Ottawa Police is going to get a 5% increase. I'm not going to give the millions of dollars because then it's like hundreds of millions of dollars for this. No one can follow that. But so the Ottawa Police are getting a 5% increase, which is interesting because they could have gone up to 6.5%, but they stayed at 5%. And I think we'll dig into that more when we get to the Ottawa Police Board meeting where they're looking at the budget, because I have some things to say. Then on the transit levy is going up 8%. So that's the part of the transit budget that's paid for by the taxes. It's a separate line item. It's going up 8%, and the fares are going up 2.5%, pretty much. Your trash, this is like, actually it's my trash day today. The actual garbage that goes to the landfill, that's going up, that fee is going up 10%. Your water bill is going up 4.5%. all the city departments, so think about planning, finance, those kind of departments, are their budgets are going up 2%, and all other agencies like the libraries, public health, they're getting just under 3%. So what does this mean for you? When you smush those all together, your property tax bill will go up 3.75%. So for average urban homeowner, that's an additional $237 a year. And I would just say that pretty much none of this is a surprise. And we'll talk about that. It's all kind of baked in many months ago. So
Yeah.
so there you go. Well, that's the highlights. Don't know if anyone can follow all those numbers, but the big numbers are police 5%, transit 8%. Although trash is 10%, the actual monetary amount is not that much. So, but generally, your taxes are going up 3.75% generally.
Right. Okay. So, John, if you remember from last year, there were a couple of very contentious measures put in, like increasing bus fares for seniors, that got a lot of attention and a lot of discussion, and actually turned out to be what I would argue was the majority of the debate about last year's budget was around these one or two very controversial measures. So, are there any controversial measures that you've seen so far? And if not, do you expect a lot of changes to this budget?
I don't expect a lot of changes to the budget. Is there ever really any big changes to the budget? No. I think that if there's any topics that will give councillors some pause for thought or debate, it might be the transit fares going up. I think that draws interest every time that you're hiking fares. So in this case, 2.5%. That means I think the single cash fare is going to be like in the $4.10 range, $4.10 range. Your adult fares or your adult passes are going up. So I think that's going to draw some discussion, but maybe even on the transit tax side as well. If it's proposed to go up 8%, it's interesting because there's a lot of discussion at City Hall around budget time about who should bear the burden of transit costs. And this time, like, you're having the transit levy go up 8%, as opposed to the transit fares going up 2.5%. So I guess people who might be a little bit more tax minded around council might talk about the transit levy proposed to go up 8%. Those who are concerned about what people are paying at the fare box are going to be concerned about, is transit affordable for people who need transit just to get around to their jobs and whatever else they do around the city. So I expect that there's going to be a discussion at that, no doubt about it. But, there won't be across the board consensus on the budget. There never really is. Sometimes it's really close, but you have a councillor around the table who's running for mayor, right? And it would be hard for someone who's running for mayor to agree with the Sutcliffe budget if you're looking to defeat him. So, I mean, if you're Jeff Leeper, I'm sure you're going to take some issue with the budget. There will be issues, big and small, that councillors flag over the next month. But, I'm not sure if anything will actually change.
Yeah. Okay. I want to talk about the Jeff Leeper angle, because I would argue that the mayor sort of called him out a couple of times, but we're going to come to that in a minute. I first want to ask just a question on process, Joanne, and that's that every year we talk about the fact that public consultation seems to be lacking, that there's really very little opportunity for people to have their say on the budget. As John pointed out, what we saw earlier this week is probably going to be very similar to what we're going to see coming out at the other end of the machine. So, what are your thoughts on public engagement, and is there a way to do it better than what we're currently doing?
Yeah, there must always be ways to do things better, and I think the city would tell you that they think they are doing a fairly good job. Like, I was part of a budget consultation in the community. I think it was June. Like, it was super early. It was run by councillors Ariel Trosser, Jeff Leeper, and city staff came to it. Like, very senior city staff was there. Isabel Jasmine, who's in the treasurer's office there. I believe that Debbie Stewart from Strategic Initiatives was there. Somebody from housing was there. Like, fairly senior people were there listening to that. So I do think they take it in. They go around the city doing it, but like, consultation is only as meaningful as the people at the top want it to be, right? So I think most councillors will tell you, no matter how much people say, here's what they want in their city, they also don't want to pay a lot of taxes, right? So it's not like they're like, yes. I mean, there are a few people who always be like, yeah, I'll pay 8% for a year or 10% for 1 year to like get us somewhere. But I think those are far and few between. And so I think to make consultation more meaningful, you really have to change the culture of the city, right? You have to want to hear that and want to know, so what I was thinking about this last night, and I was just thinking, city staff will tell you, will tell this, like the mayor's office, the city manager's office, like, here's what you need to keep the place going, right? We need this stuff. Here's what we have to provide for the province, right? Like, so, there's not a huge amount of the budget that's discretionary. And then it kind of comes up from like the mayor's office, what they've heard. The mayor, he talks to some counselors and that. And so it's kind of a vibe thing. And I'm not sure how to do it other than have someone say, we're going to do it completely differently, right? And so I think you just need a culture shift there. Again, they have this budget magazine. I have to say, I'm sorry to say, I actually like the budget magazine. Like, yeah. If you're just coming to the budget for the first time, it's a great way to learn how the budget is. Now, it doesn't give you all the little bits and pieces, right? It's a fairly rosy picture of how it's presented, but they do tell you, here's how we have consulted, and there's a long list of things. So I feel on one hand, the city feels like it is doing everything it can, but to actually think, okay, are we really hearing from people on what they really want? That's got to come from the top. That shift.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Actually, sorry, John, before you jump in, I just want to say that Joanne, you mentioned the budget magazine. This is something that I think we could publicize a little bit more, because I think it is actually one of the best innovations from the city over the last couple of years. And that is, most of the budget documents are completely incomprehensible to most people. Just, but what they've tried to do is create this quote unquote magazine, which is maybe, 50 pages, maybe 100 pages, where they try to actually speak in language that you might be able to understand.
Lots of graphics. They have this thing at the beginning where it shows what you might do in a day with your family and all the places you touch city services. I like that, actually. I think it's really good, because we always say, municipal government's the closest to the people, but it actually shows it. So
yeah. So we'll put a link to this in the show notes.
That's great, John. And I was wondering if I don't know if the city intends to print off any copies. I know it's weird. We're in a soft copy world, right? We have the internet, we have this thing, but I think like it actually might be effective to drop off these magazines at like rec centers and city facilities, because I think that's something that people just pick up and browse while your kid's at hockey practice or something like that. So it might be a good idea. Print is not quite dead. And I think like there's a way to like actually connect with people. Yeah. And on that point, I agree with you, Neil. I think the magazine is a good idea. In fact, I don't like poo-pooing on any kind of thing the city tries to do to engage the public on something like weighty as the budget. Like, I know like there's been like call-ins. I remember Mayor Watson had a call-in with all the senior staff around the table in his office to hear. I don't think anyone called in to add some commentary about what they think should be in or not in the budget. But like, I think like, look, that's great. Like, try anything. They've done traveling road shows across the city ahead of the budget season to try to engage with certain communities. It's tough to engage. Sometimes it's tough to engage the citizens without a proposal first. And that's what ends up happening this week with the draft budget. Here's a proposal from essentially the mayor and senior staff. What do you think? And so in a way, I don't know what the better solution is right now on process, but sometimes you just need to start with an idea and a proposal and go from there. And that's what essentially what we're doing.
Yeah. Can I ask one last question about process? And that's something that is relatively new. Is the use of strong mayor powers. They have specific implications for the budget. Could one of you describe what those implications are? And I just want to caveat that Mayor Sutcliffe has made it clear that he does not really intend to use strong mayor powers. But in theory, if a strong mayor did, what could those powers look like vis-a-vis the budget?
Well, I want to just clarify one thing, and that it is true. He says he won't use those strong mayor powers, and he hasn't used them for anything other than ceremonial things that he has to use them for. Weirdly, the strong mayor powers does not allow the mayor's office to delegate the budget, in that the budget that's presented, the draft budget that's presented, is the mayor's budget. This is why kind of last year I was rolling my eyes a bit when the mayor was all surprised at the increase in seniors' fares. And he's like, oh, this is terrible. I'm like, well, it's your budget. You knew what was in there. Are you surprised the seniors are mad? So in that sense, yeah, he has to bring the budget. And in reality, it's not actually that different from how Jim Watson presented the budget. He talked to counselors, he brought ideas in, works with the city manager's office, the treasurer's office. They present the budget, and then a committee has at it. But there are specific rules now on if you want to change the budget. John, do you want to know? Do you know those? Do you want me to say?
Well, I
Go
mean,
ahead.
if the mayor wanted to activate a strong mayor powers, there's a veto process where he could veto any changes council proposes, and then council can use another veto process to out veto the mayor. So there's kind of a back and forth through the vetoes.
It's
Um,
also harder though to change the budget now. It's not just a simple majority. If you want to change something in the draft budget, you have to have 2/3 of council vote for it. So
so
that's
yeah,
like
it favors
16
the
Right.
councillors
mayor.
or 17 councillors. Like that is a lot of people to have to be against something. So this is another reason why the budget has so little chance of being changed at all, I think.
The other thing I found, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Mayor Sutcliffe had a little press conference before the draft budget was unveiled, right? The other day, and
Yeah,
that's something
that's
new
new.
that is different from previous Mayor Watson, who just
Yeah.
like made his budget speech, and that's when you found out what was in the budget. So it
Mhm.
was interesting, and the same thing happened with Lansdowne, right? Mayor Sutcliffe made
Yes.
sure they gathered the media together first to get his messages out there ahead of. I don't know what the strategy is, other than to maybe get the AM news headlines, or on CBC get those quick headlines on the radio or online. But it's interesting. He's really taking a different approach to selling these big files, including, as it turns out, the city budget.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't love it.
No, why not?
I don't love it as a citizen and as a former reporter. You're giving a speech in like half an hour at council. It's, council starts at 10. You want to make the morning headlines? Okay, move the council meeting to 9:30. But this idea of going ahead, it's not like he can't do it. He's allowed to do whatever he wants. I'm just saying it's very clearly to spin the budget in your own way. And I don't even know why you need to do that, because the budget is there. I mean,
Yeah.
he takes questions. I think he took questions after the council
he
meeting
did.
though as well. So I'm
Yeah.
not sure why it's necessary. And Lansdowne, it was pretty obvious why he did it, for political spin. In this case, like, it's not a surprise that like he had already announced that the tax increase is going to be 3.75%. So I'm not sure why that was necessary, but it is interesting. And Watson didn't do that, which I think is notable.
Well, you know what, Joanna, I do think it is about political spin, actually. And again, in the budget case, because and I want to come back to this point that I made earlier about Jeff Leeper. He went, I'd say the main message that I took from it was that the mayor said, this is going to be a 3.75% tax increase. And the way that we are able to do this, unlike other cities, he said Toronto, who have had to raise their property taxes in the 10% range. He's saying we're different because, one, we're finding all these cost savings within the budget, and number two, because of the money that we're getting from higher levels of government. And that's how he's saying that we can be different. And then he's saying, I contrast that with some of the people around council who are arguing that we need to increase property taxes. And he's not naming them by name, but yeah, he's clearly doing that. So let's start with maybe John. I want to ask you about the claim about money from higher levels of government. And I guess this really goes back to his Fairness for Ottawa campaign. Do you think that's a legitimate explanation for why we're having low tax increases?
Maybe, and I know you have some thoughts on this too, Neil, and I think they're valid as well. Yeah, look, maybe we're still waiting to hear about the LRT upload to the province and what that looks like. So yeah, I mean, that's a huge cost that comes off the city's books. That was certainly
and yet, I'm sorry, but they have built in $47 million in this budget from the LRT uplift. And I understand that won't be negotiated for years. So what's this $47 million placeholder? So yeah.
Well, very exact. 47 million, right? So
it's a lot of money.
I'm curious to see. And then the same goes with the Highway 174 upload. I think that they've built in $9 million there. So it's not chump change, but it's not a massive amount of money either.
I think we are getting that money though. That's actual real money. Like, that's the other thing. It's hard to know what is real money, what's fake money, right? I think there's some like maintenance money that's actually coming in for the 174, but not the full upload is not done yet.
Many details. And look, the new deal, if I remember correctly, the province was going to give the city more money for stuff like homelessness initiatives and shelters and some road infrastructure. There was supposed to be support, if I remember, for Invest Ottawa to revitalize downtown. So there is
that skating rink on William Street.
Oh my gosh, I don't know if they're bringing that back, but I mean, there was also, if I remember correctly, guys, the new deal with the province included a plan about public safety for residents. And maybe we shouldn't be surprised by the added financial boost for the Ottawa Police Service in this draft budget, because I know that was a conversation that actually happened during the New Deal discussions. And we'll get into the police budget much more, I'm sure, at a later pod.
Okay, I would like to say I can't take it anymore, John. I'm sorry that I'm jumping in, but I actually worked on the long-term financial plan for Toronto a couple years ago. It's one of the most fun things I ever did at the company that I was working at for a while. And I have not done a side-by-side comparison to what Toronto's getting, and to what Ottawa's getting, but Toronto's New Deal was way more money than our New Deal with the province. And yet they still had to increase their taxes by 10%, right? They got more money from the feds for homelessness. Their problems are also bigger too, right? And so to say
exactly.
that, and there's zero chance they have not been looking for efficiencies. How many times did Steve Kay, the former city manager, tell us, 2015, 2016, 2017, finding efficiencies, blah, blah, blah. Of course, everyone looks for efficiencies. That's what they do. Are there more now? I don't know. And I have a few comments on that, but yeah, like the idea that somehow that Ottawa is being run better than Toronto. I have no idea if that's true. Like I would have to actually do some analysis, but they got a pretty good deal from the province, and it was more money than ours. And they also have bigger, they have the same problems, but in a larger scale because they're just more people. But I'm very skeptical of this claim.
Well, Joanne, I did the side by side, and by my calculation, per capita, people in Toronto got about double the amount that people in Ottawa got. And I will include a link in the show notes to that analysis.
They got a ton for transit. They got a ton of money that we didn't get. And they got 2 highway uploads. I wrote that part in the plan. Like, the DVP and the Gardner are being uploaded. Like they have a lot happening there. So the idea that we're doing well because, we have this New Deal and Toronto doesn't hold water for me.
The original question was, is the New Deal, whether it's like fair enough for Ottawa or not, is it helping keeping taxes lower? And then if you're taking this, if the number is 47 million taken out of the budget because we're going to upload that money, then maybe you can make the argument. Maybe you're making the argument, that can affect the tax base. The other thing about the New Deal is it the best deal that Ottawa could possibly get with a premier who's really focused on Toronto? Do you think that there's any leverage? Is there any leverage the city had to get a better deal from Toronto-focused Premier Doug Ford? I don't know. Probably. Maybe.
Well,
maybe.
You know what? I'm glad you bring it up, because when I think back to that New Deal, which was from 2024, like the spring of 2024, I remembered listening to the press conference that the mayor put on about it. And
with the premier,
the way that they described it, both the mayor and the premier said, "Oh yeah, we had some good phone calls earlier in the week." And it's like, really? You're negotiating like the New Deal for Ottawa over the phone? Yeah. And that's why I thought it was actually really quite a weak deal that we were able to negotiate.
I know in the Toronto instance, it was like the senior people in Toronto were hashing it out with senior people from the province. Like, what would we get? What would happen? But John's deal, I think it's usually a good idea. It's good for us that the premier just ignores us a bit, like doesn't change the ward boundary.
Let's keep our speed cameras too,
things like
which are being turned off
but
today,
it is true though, and also I think there's also a sense in Toronto. Well, the federal government will take care of Ottawa, City of Ottawa, right? And
that's really
not necessarily the case.
Yeah,
I don't think that's the case, but I think that's like we'll deal with Toronto and the feds will deal with Ottawa, and I don't know if that's really happening.
Joanne, you touched on it briefly, but can we come back to this point about efficiencies within the budget? Because the mayor made a big claims about this. He said, I think we're saving, what's the number this year? Like about 45 million this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then about $250 million over the 4 years. Do you think those savings are they real? Are they legitimate?
Okay. So I don't know. And I don't know how to find out. Like, this is one thing is, you've done this for 4 years. Good. Like, people should be looking for these things. Where's a report that shows what all of these things are? I thought there would be one. The treasurer, the CFO, Cyril Rogers, pointed out that if you go department by department in the budget books, you'll see there's lines where you see some savings. And so I looked for some. And so if you look at it, don't look at the revenue stuff, but on the expenditures, if you see in the very last column, things in brackets, it means they're spending less this year than you were on years before. The problem is I don't see any explanations of what anything is. So I have no idea. Let me just read you one. I have to look at it because no one can remember these words. Supply chain and operations support training. In 2026, it will be down $1.6 $1.628 million. Great savings of $1.6 million.
Yeah.
What is this? I don't know. Is it responsible to cut that? Is it short-sighted? Is it just happening because last year we had a one-time weird expense? I don't know. So it's impossible to see this. And again, I would love to have Steve K on the show one day. That would be so fun. Because like, again, they found efficiencies every year. I don't know if these are a larger magnitude. They may well be, but I don't actually understand what these mean. And so when there are cuts, it's like, are you putting things off? Are you cutting, are there actually good cuts? Are they, using AI to, have processes? In fact, actually, there's a different department. These cuts were through the one little committee that was the mayor, councillors, Kathy Curry and Marty Carr. There's another small committee that's on cutting red tape. So that's a separate committee. So sure, there's always ways to make it more efficient, and $44 million sounds like a good number, but I don't actually understand what that means in reality on the ground.
Yeah. How about you, John? Any thought on whether these? Yeah.
Well, this is where the budget magazine actually lays out the categories of efficiencies. The reason why I'm looking over here, guys, is I'm pulling up the magazine because I want to see the chart. And so fleet efficiencies, there's something called workforce management saving strategy that saves $6.5 million. I don't know, like to Joanne's point, we don't know what it is. What did they do? Did they cut places? Like, how is that going to affect frontline service? Discretionary savings, sponsorship they found a sponsor for the tree planting for $500,000. They got some savings, looks like in trash collection or management. So,
but again, there are these savings, and that's good to have them. Like if you look at the budget, there's a lot of savings in every line called materials and supplies. I don't know. Like
fewer paper
maybe
clips.
That's
fewer paper clips.
No more paper, everyone. That's it. Just take notes on your phones.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But you know what? To your point about you would expect to see reductions in departmental budgets. I mean, if I'm going to look at my notes here now, and the number one cut for this year was in transit, and this is all in the operational budget. So they're saying they're cutting $14 million in transit, and yet the transit budget is going up by $92 million, right? So.
And what are those 14 million cuts? Like, what are those efficiencies? And are they things that we're going to actually regret later? Like, are they also short-term efficiencies that in the long term are going to be like, that screwed us?
The way that I explain it, it's like when I think about our household budget, we've got a certain amount that we use for, let's call it streaming services. Okay. Like let's say $60 a month we spend on streaming services. And so last month I cut Disney, so save $20 there. But then it's like me turning around and saying, "Oh, but you know what? I had to buy TSN because of the Blue Jays." So,
Sportsnet actually, deal. Sportsnet actually.
We save $20 a month, and yet we're still spending the same amount, right? So that's, I think, essentially what's going on with this exercise. So it's a bit smoke and mirrors.
But I guess they would say, well, you wanted TSN. And at least you didn't keep Disney as well, right? So I think that's what they would say. But again, I just don't understand how you can, to me, the details matter. And how can you evaluate whether something is good or not when you have no idea what these are things?
Yeah. No, Joanne, my wife would disagree with you on that point that we need TSN.
I also agree with her. So,
but here is okay. So I just want to come back to the last point, and you actually referenced this, Joanne, about why Toronto had to have 10% tax increases and why Ottawa's at 3.75%. It has to do with Toronto looked at its infrastructure deficit and said, we are going to address this. And the only way to do it is through looking at it through a tax angle. And so to fill that gap, we're going to have to increase taxes by 10%. That's what happened like 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's the part of the project that I was part of. Like they said, look, their 10-year infrastructure gap is $32 billion. And some of the stuff's not discretionary. Some of it was like, we need new trains for the Bloor subway line right now. And one of the things that they looked at, and what part of what Strategy Corp worked on, and part of the policy part of it we wrote on was, look, the cities have to show that they're doing what they can as well. Yes, we need a new fiscal framework, but cities also have to do their part. And Toronto, you haven't been doing your part. So I think that's what you're coming to now.
Well, I mean, it's you're right that cities are they've been instructed by the province to come out and present their plans for how they're going to fill these infrastructure gaps. Toronto did it 2 years ago. In fact, all cities across Ontario were supposed to have this done by July 1st of 2025. in the case of the city of Ottawa, we took care of the rate side. Remember, we talked about that back in June. We never took care of the tax side. And so the tax side is like, it's this unanswered question. It's about a $7 billion gap just on the tax side. That quite frankly, like I would say that the reason we have lower taxes in Toronto is because we have ignored to move forward with this analysis. As soon as we do this analysis, there's going to have something's going to have to break.
So what will happen next year then? Like, do you think you're gonna we'll have to do it, and whoever the mayor is next time will have to increase the budget by 10, 12%? And like, is this report gonna have to come out during election year? Like, what do you think will happen?
Well, that's a great question. And so, as I say, the report was supposed to come out this past summer. Originally, we were told it got pushed to the fall. Now we're being told it's being pushed to the spring. I don't think it's even going to show up in the spring at this point.
Next spring? That's where that's terrible.
That's what city staff are saying now. But really? I bet you it gets pushed to after the election.
Is it possible, because the federal government's budget just announced billions in dollars for municipalities for infrastructure? And is it possible, guys, that the city's waiting to see what comes from that? I'm not saying the city's going to get all the money it needs to, like, far from it, to start repairing things. But it's like billions and billions and billions of dollars that are going to flow to specifically directly to municipalities and provinces and territories. So I'm wondering, guys, if the city is waiting to see how much money they're going to get to do this type of work before they come out and say what their plan is.
They're also waiting to see if they're getting this LRT uplift, right? And if they're going to wait that long till next spring, maybe they think in 6 months they can hash part of it out. I would be surprised, frankly, because I'm still very skeptical about this idea because I don't know how it would work. I mean, it would be great. I'm not against getting money from the province for the LRT. We got screwed, I think, as a city compared to other cities and how their light rail was funded. But still, like, how long? We're just going to wait indefinitely to have this plan, like until plans, until this comes out.
Yeah, John. I mean, it's a fair statement, right? That there is. The feds have identified this as an area where they need to be more engaged. But I actually would argue that these sort of initiatives are coming up all the time, right? Like it's a constant treadmill because everyone's just so far in the hole right now that everyone's scrambling to find solutions. So and you know what, Joanne, with the LRT upload, so we've already booked the $47 million, right? Like, we've already given it a number. We've already put it in the budget, even though that was nothing but a campaign promise from Doug Ford, right?
Yeah. And I mean, if it really happens, it could be hundreds of millions of dollars. But what are we going to do? Yeah. Wait indefinitely to make a plan? Yeah. Apparently, yes. Yeah. Yes, apparently that's what we're doing.
Okay. Last question I want to ask you on the budget is around affordability. So the mayor has said we need to keep taxes low to protect affordability. Do you think that's the right way to go about affordability for a city, or are there's clearly other ways, right?
Yeah, I mean, what does affordable mean? Yes, what you pay in property taxes is part of your expenses as a homeowner and as a renter, because you're, obviously people don't think of renters, but landlords are not just going to pay that out of their profits, right? They build it into your rents. And so that's, your housing is part of it, but there's a ton of other things. Transit, number one, right? Like, you were saying earlier, some people are like, well, why should we pay out of the taxes for transit? Are you kidding me? Like, what if I walk everywhere? Why do I have to pay for the roads? Why do I have to pay for anything that I don't use? Right. I'm not saying that you're saying that, John, but to the, to the critics who say that, the less reliable transit is, the fares are just ridiculous. I'm sorry. Like, and I know that some councillors fought against last year's 5% fare increase. So now it's at 2.5%, but like, it has to be more affordable and more reliable. It's going to take a long time to make it more reliable. That's going to take a lot of work because we can't do it in one term, but we could make it more affordable immediately. And I think that we should do that. And that's part of your affordability. The idea that your teenagers, like some of them who don't have school passes, they have to pay a full fare. You're 12, like that's ridiculous. And also, when it's not reliable, people can't get to work. It maybe affects where they live, right? Maybe they have to live in a more expensive housing or inadequate housing because they have to be closer to work because they can't get there. Or because they can't travel on transit. Like if you're in Barrhaven and it takes you 2.5 hours to get downtown, like maybe you need a second car, and that's not affordable, and it's not good for the environment. And it's not good for our roads, and it's not good for congestion. Like there are a lot of things about it. So it's very short-sighted. What's your community center like? And what are your rec programs like? Do you have to go to a gym? Where do you take your kids to learn to swim? Like all of these things are a part of an affordable, livable life in the city. And it's not just the property tax bill at the end of the day. Like, what are you getting for that property tax dollar? That is the actual question.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even things like some peripheral issues maybe, but taxi meter rates, are ultimately like set by council and on recommendations from the industry and committee. So City Hall has a lot of hands into this affordability question. Taxes are the biggest bang for the affordability strategy because they are spread across everyone across the city, from property owners to, as Joanne said, renters, because they ultimately pay what their landlords are paying in taxes, and that they must be paid. They must be paid if you own land. So when you're talking about affordability, I think that's why taxes get a lot of attention, is because so many people have to pay them, and they're spread right across the municipality.
Yeah, but I mean, what I would argue, John, is like we talk about like 3.75 save versus 4.75, right? And the difference for the average household, and this is based upon, by the way, like property values from 2016. So whether these numbers actually hold or not is, because the Ontario MPAC, the assessment corporation hasn't updated it since
Yeah,
2016.
that's going to be in 2027 after election year. It's going to be, well, it depends on where you live in town.
They'll be
Very bad
shocked.
for
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, like by my calculation, like a 1% property tax increase works out to about $40 per household. And when you think about pooling that money and what you can provide in terms of services, it could, to all of the different elements that Joanne referred to, really could make a material difference in someone's life, having those services.
Yeah, it's more like it's. I think it's closer to like 50 something, right? Because I think they said for the average homeowner, your taxes are going up $236. But if they were going up $290,
Yeah. Okay.
that's not as big a deal.
Well, look,
But I do take, but I take your point. I do agree with you.
yeah.
On that.
But I mean, just to be clear, none of us like to pay more taxes than we have to. I think that's a given. And actually, on that point,
I see where you're going,
move
Neil.
to topic number 2, which
Oh
is
my
the
God.
city has introduced that you have now the option to pay more taxes if you so choose. So, either of you jump in and tell us what's going on here?
God only knows. Okay, so apparently, and this is why I was late. I was holding you guys up, as I always am every week, because I was looking at the 2024 motion at council from December 11, 2024. Everyone decided to look into an option to have the city allow residents and businesses in Ottawa to donate to the city. Like literally, it's like, oh, do you want to give to Boys and Girls Club directly, or maybe you just want to give $20 to the city? Okay, bizarre. I would say I was looking up the motion, and it said that an analysis would come back in Q3 of this year. And I asked them, I'm like, I don't remember it. Maybe I missed it. I talked to a couple counselors. They're like, no, I didn't see that. It was like, did not come back at all. And I thought, first of all, only city, only Ottawa. They're so tone deaf. What are they thinking? And then I was like, no, actually, Toronto has had this program since 2011. And last year, and these are just, they got more than $1 million of donations. And that's just from the donations that need a tax receipt. That's not even the lower ones. So it's not done, but theirs is really different. Like, for example, you can give in somebody's name, like as a, like maybe somebody loved a certain program or a park, and you can make a donation in memoriam of someone. You can also give to specific programs. You can give to specific parts of the city, like summer camps. You can, donate to that. If you go on the city's website, and kudos to CTV for doing that story because it had escaped my attention. If you go to the link, it's just like a form. It's like name, email, donation, and it just goes to the city. Just city will use it however it likes. And you're like, what? What is this? Who would do that? For I could think of bad reasons why people would do that, but why would anyone do that? And secondly, we have a donations to the city for community benefit policy from 2018. So I don't know how this is different. So basically now you can just go in a form, fill out a form and give $5,000 to $25,000 to the city to spend however it wants. It just seems really bizarre to me.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know
John,
if this.
do you see any risk here?
Oh yeah, of course, you can't have sure, a rich neighborhood could say we're going to pull our money together and want to build a rec center on city land and managed by the city. So they'll like, and businesses, right, can like put
You
money
can't
into
even
what
seem
they
to
think.
do that on the form. It doesn't even say where like you
Well,
want your money to go.
I don't know. I didn't see the
Right.
language of that motion, but it's clearly like there should have been more rigor to the motion about what exactly like they want to do here. I think the spirit of this idea was to say like if there was another tornado that ravaged a neighborhood, that there was an ability for people to donate money to a cause that an emergency situation, flooding, helping people. I don't know if the spirit of this is supposed to be like donate money to the city and like earmark it for new bike lanes in this neighborhood, whatever, right? So I think there needs
The
to be. I
motion
see some.
says, I'm going to read this motion because it's ridiculous. It just says, direct staff to complete a review and business case on the viability for an accessible online voluntary contribution programs that allows residents, businesses, and other entities to provide contributions to city services. And that's it. And it just says, that respects the city policies for donations to community benefits, and that staff bring the analysis back to committee and council for consideration in Q3. So what the hell?
Yeah.
Like none of that, like that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
They're not
I
going to
mean,
do the Q3, but I saw the reporting from CTV that asked the city about this, and they're planning to bring something back next year. So I'm
Correct.
Well, then
sure
why
there's
is the
going to be more
form up?
thought put
Like,
into this.
why is the form up then? Like, if like the analysis should not come after the program is
No, I don't
started.
know why
That's
they.
not how.
Yeah.
Well, I got to admit, I worry about the point that you raised, John, about wealthy neighborhoods could just get together and say, okay, we're going to accelerate whatever we want in our neighborhood. Number one,
Mhm.
but number two is, as Joanne, as you pointed out, the maximum donation is $25,000, which is quite a lot, and you could see someone potentially, an individual or a corporation, trying to make a large donation basically to curry reciprocity, right? Like,
And favor, right? Like, yeah.
and favor. Yeah, it's like bread in our bone. It's like that we, when someone does something for us, we like to do something back for them, right? Subconsciously, I'm not saying that there's that anyone would do it, would try to connect the dots directly, but I just think that it's just another way that people that have special interests at City Hall can use this as a tool to essentially curry favor.
And where are the guidelines and where are the guardrails for this, right? But in Toronto, like, I think they have to check with the lobby registry. You can't be on the lobby registry and give any money, right? Because it's like, is this a back way? Is this a back way to curry favor with councillor? It's not supposed to be attached to any decision, right? But how do you know that? Who's watching this? I don't know. It just seems very odd. And also just, again, I did look through some news files last night. I don't see any scandals or controversy that were attached to the Toronto program, but the Toronto program has a lot more details on it. And it's not just, here is a blank form to give us money. Like, who wants to do that? I can't imagine. Anyway, very weird.
Well, let's see what further clarification comes forward in the months to come. Let's move to topic number 3, which is the urban boundary expansion. Now, we talked about this again a few months ago, and that was when there were two packets of land that developers had applied to the city to say, we want to include these parcels of land in the urban boundary. One was in South March, which is north of Canada. The other was north of Barrhaven. Now, the city has come back, and of course, you'll remember when we first discussed it, it was around the cost for the developers to apply to the city to even have this considered.
It was $1.8 million was the fee.
Yeah, and it got reduced down to, what was it, like 300,000 or something?
Yeah, and the city never reported that out. It was just a terrible, terrible process that the city had on that. Yeah.
Okay. So the city has come back and said, we are going to deny these expansions to the urban boundary. Joanne, maybe you can just fill us in a little bit about the parcels and whether this decision makes sense or not.
And also have a disclaimer, right? Because I do contract work now as a senior advisor for Strategy Corp, and they have represented South March. And more than a year ago now, I wrote some briefings. Oh, that's good. That's why you love the live podcasting. Yay. Everyone loves a pet.
Yes.
Yeah. So I just wanted to mention that I have written like situational, like background briefings, and I've drafted some reports for this because a lot of this, you really need to know the local politics of this, right? Like South March, my own view is keep the urban boundary expansion as close to zero as possible, but it's probably not going to be zero. Other people disagree. But South March came in literally when the city scored lands back in like 2019 to 2021, when it was reviewing the official plan. South March came in second, literally the second highest score. And then it got thrown out when our gold medal walk-on motion from Tim Tierney came and put in Taywin. And then a bunch of crazy stuff happened. Like then the province decided to put a bunch more land in, but also like some controversial agricultural land that even raised eyebrows among developers. Like, why is this land in? Then the Toronto Greenbelt scandal happened. So the province took all the lands back out. And so there have been some people trying to figure out ways to put their land back in. And so last year, the new provincial planning statement, which is the planning policy for Ontario, was changed to allow corporations or to allow property owners to apply like one by one. So this is what's kind of happened. I'm not saying that's good public policy. In fact, I think it's terrible public policy, but I think it's the province kind of saying, okay, we've screwed around with planning policy a lot of ways. And so these folks, there's disagreement between the city and developers on what population projections we should be using, right? The city is using the ones that they used in the official plan. They literally are from 2019. They're like, according to the government, 250 million people off of, how much we're supposed to grow. And so they've applied. The city refused to like give a decision. Both those files, I don't know much about the Barrhaven one. They're at the OLT. They're being appealed already at the Ontario Land Tribunal. There was a very weird schmozzle at two different committees. I don't know if we want to talk about that, but basically, committee just agreed to reject them, and they're going to go to the OLT, which I think council would like because nobody wants to deal with this. Like, urban boundary expansion discussions are very controversial, and that's the last thing they need in election year, I think. So they just said no, but. At the planning and era committee, some weird things happened.
Well, actually, can I just talk about OLT for a minute? And do you guys have a sense of how long that process takes? Like, is that something that's likely to be resolved in the foreseeable future?
Well, I think it's going to be resolved before, the city is reviewing what to do with the new population projections.
Yeah.
And they claim, they're not even started really very well. Like, they're not down the road. So I think this decision will come in before that. But I know on the South March file, I don't know this from the clients, I know this from the city planning, they said, look, let's talk some more. And we want to defer this till like Q1. Planning said, okay. And then at ERAC, usually the vice chair is the person who has to move a motion. And the vice chair is Clark Kelly, who is the counselor for that area. And he refused to move the motion to defer it. And so they didn't defer it. And now it's not deferred, right? So it's a schmozzle. And I get that the city doesn't want to deal with that. And counselors are like, all right, good. But you take your chances at the OLT. OLT is very land happy, I would just say.
Oh, yeah.
And you don't know how, like they might add way more land than you wanted than was even being asked for. That has happened before. So there is a little bit of risk to that. So I know that's very complicated, but it was a weird file.
But the strange thing about this is, and to your point about population projections, that is something that I think the city needs to look at much more urgently to get us. If you look at what's happening with some of the federal policies that affect this city, so obviously there's the job layoffs and a sense that the public service is not going to grow again the way that it has in the past. But then number two, and perhaps more importantly, is around just immigration policy. That the rapid growth that we saw in previous years is just coming to an end. Sorry, my dog is coming back into the room.
Well, he really is interested in population growth. I looked up these numbers. So one thing that I've learned in the last few years is the Ministry of Finance puts out population projections. The Ontario Ministry of Finance puts out population projections every year. They come out around July. And they take into account things like immigration policy, other policy. So this July, after the immigration cuts were announced, they are still projecting that Ottawa is going to grow to 1.68 million people by 2051. And that's like an extra 250,000 people than the city has estimated for like in its official plan. However, to your point about public service, what's going to happen, it'll be interesting to see what next July's projections are, right? So they do change. all the time. But like Eastern Ontario is projected to grow faster than any other place in Ontario by the government. So, but yeah, they change all the time, of course, based on policy and immigration and other things happening.
But to the question about the OLT, like, yeah, to Joanne's point, the OLT could like make a whole different ruling or decision, add more land in.
Mhm.
And especially like this plays in the developers' hands because it was such a debacle 4 years ago with the Taywin discussion that you gotta think that's going to play in their favor when it comes to arguing to an OLT chair about and explaining the background too.
I am so torn about the OLT because I think I wrote earlier in my career, like we should banish the Ottawa municipal, the OMB, which was the precursor to the OLT, because they were always overturning city decisions. But then like I see Taywin and I'm like, yeah, but now like council is wrong, right? Like council made a bad decision that should be able to be appealed, but that was not appealed, right? Like that's the problem. It's like no one's making a good decision. Like it's not like when the official plan went to the province, even though I heard that there were actually staffers like planning in the staff, like the bureaucracy that were very against Taywin. They didn't take Taywin out. Like when they sent the official plan back to Ottawa, it's not like they took Taywin out and put other lands in. They just added a bunch more lands. I'm like, so you've added these other lands, left this terrible parcel in, and also added a weird farm. So I don't know. Like I don't know what to do about it because bad decisions all around.
It is unfortunate. Like Taywin has really messed things up and has opened up these doors that, half open these doors that we can't really close now. Like for instance, with this South March land, which, as you mentioned, Joanne, was very highly rated as if we're going to expand the urban boundary, that's as good as it gets. So we are, to use your word, we are in a schmozzle. Okay, well, listen, that is it for this week. We're going to wrap up before my dog introduces herself one more time. I would like to thank the two of you for today's discussion. I'd like to thank all of our listeners for joining us today. We will be back in a week's time. Until then, this has been the Better Ottawa Municipal Panel.